Real-world computer programming for kids, step 31. Catch-all and logging without an X or an aux. Hello all and welcome back. You may recall that we added some try-catch blocks to some of the methods earlier. In this step, we will put them just about everywhere in all methods of any complexity at all, along with the more informative exception messages that we recently added. After that, we will add logging, too. But the logging should not be thought of as something like this. The newsletter shows a picture of chopping down trees in the early days of Missouri. First, though, for the try-except blocks, Visual Studio also gives us a helping hand with this. To demonstrate that, select the entire drop-down event handler method and then right-click and select Snippet Surround With, as shown here. And it's actually try-catch blocks, not try-except blocks, although it's basically the same thing. It shows a screenshot of that. Then from the context menu items that display, double-click try as shown here, and it shows that in the screenshot. That will surround the code in the method in a try-catch block, as you can see here, and then it shows the code where that has been done for us automatically instead of having to type it all in and get it formatted right. Do this with all the non-trivial methods, anything with more than a couple of lines of code. And even then, if the code seems tricky or like something which might fail, you might want to add it even if it only has one or two lines of code. After you have done that, go back and replace this part, left curly brace, blank line, throw, semicolon, right curly brace with this, and it has a fairly involved catch block that it shows. Make sure that the update the form part has the name of the method in which the block is located. Otherwise, you could be misled by the exception message telling you the exception is occurring in one method when that actually is not the case. It's happening somewhere else. It cuts me to the quick and the slow too to tell you this, but coding is hard and you will have bugs in your code. Every app more complicated than the most trivial has them. And even when you fix bugs, you often introduce others. It is typical on fixing 5 bugs to introduce 2 or 3 others. That is why we need all the help we can get to decipher just what is going wrong and where. And because software is basically an accident waiting to happen, like this pebble precariously poised over the precipice, and a photograph of a giant boulder that looks like it's about to fall is shown. We want to code defensively. That means adding catch code as above and also at least consider adding logging to your app. That brings us to the second part of this step, to the part about logging. First though, what is logging? Why is logging helpful? And is it worth the effort? I'll answer those questions in order. What is logging? Logging is chopping or sawing down very large woody vegetables to be used in building houses and stuff. While true, as mentioned earlier, that's not the kind of logging we're talking about here. In the context of computer programming, logging is writing a record of what's happening in your code as it runs. Thus, you can consult it later after the run of the app and see what happened. For example, you can log when a certain place in your code is reached. If you want to, you can also log the time down to the millisecond, so you can see how long your code takes to run or how long the user is spending in a certain activity before he moves on. You could also record any exception details that may arise. In the case of the app we are working on, you could also make note of which answers the user is choosing. You can even record who the user is, which account they are logged in under at any rate. Although we won't be doing it, I have in the past also set it up so that I, the coder/programmer/developer, am sent an email with details whenever a user encounters an exception. The email would contain details about the exception, when it occurred, and who was apparently running the app, which machine the email was sent from. Sometimes I would get the email, decipher the problem, and be working on implementing a fix before the user could even tell me that they had encountered the problem. I would be able to tell them, "Oh yes, I know. You got an error message that said such and such, didn't you?" Or I would proactively send them an email which said something like, "I see you got an error message that said this or that. I am working on a fix and will have a new version of the app deployed soon." Why is logging helpful? It can save you a lot of time stepping through the code a key press at a time to see which path the code is taking in various circumstances. In the case of exception messages, it records them for you, word for word, instead of you having to write them down by hand when they appear on the screen in a message box, or taking a screenshot of that message box, etc. So although it takes a little bit of time to set up logging, it is well worth the time spent. You end up saving a lot more time than what you had to put into it up front. In other words, logging provides great ROI, return on investment of time. And as they say, time is money. Is logging worth the effort? Yes, for the reasons just stated above. The time and effort required to implement logging in your app is not that much. And even if you don't end up looking at the log files created all that often, which is hopefully the case unless you're just that interested in them, they can provide you a lot of peace of mind and come in extremely handy when a problem does arise. Oftentimes, what is happening and when, according to the user, differs from what the log files tell you, which keeps you from wasting time going down a false path. So since it should be plain that we should implement a logging solution in our app, now the question is how to do it. That's what the rest of this step will cover. I won't go into great detail about what I'm about to show you because the code I use to implement the logging service is a little too complicated or advanced to go into here, for now anyway. But the important thing is that if you copy and paste it, it is easy to use. The first thing to do is to create 2 new classes in the project. We follow the same process as when we added multiple choice class. Follow these steps. 1. In the Solution Explorer area of Visual Studio, right-click the name of the project. 2. From the context menu that is displayed, select Add Class. 3. In the Add New Item dialog that displays, change the name of the class we are about to create from the default class1.cs to Multiple Choice Consts. CONSTS. 4. Replace all of the code in that new class file with the following, and it shows some code. If you ever want to turn off logging, presumably temporarily, simply change the assignment to the bool variable logging from true to false. 5. Now we'll add the second class for this step. In the Add New Item dialog that displays, after following the same procedure as before for the previous new class, change the name of the class we are about to create from the default class1.cs to Exceptional Logging Service, or Exception Logging Service, rather. 6. Select the Add button at the lower right of the Add New Item dialog. Note the using clauses that were automatically added for you, and it shows a list of 5. Most of these you won't need. Delete all of them except using system.txt and add using system.io so that you have just those 2 using clauses in exception logging service.cs, using system.io and using system.txt. 8. Prepend public before class exception logging service so that it is public class exception logging service. 9. Copy and paste the following code between the curly braces of that new class. And then it's got quite a bit of code that you will want to simply copy and paste, unless you enjoy typing that stuff in. Wallaby, or voila, as the French stubbornly continue to say. Although I won't go into detail about the code because it is a little complex for where we are in our journey, you may have noticed that it does record the time each log entry is made, and it shows a line of code that does that. You may also have been able to figure out that the log file can be found in the same directory as the exe, the app, the executable, with the rather silly name, easy as falling off a .log. And it shows that line of code. Of course, you could really name the log file just about anything you want. You might prefer to name it easy as falling off a .txt so that the user will be able to look at it without having to explicitly select Open with Notepad in Windows Explorer to view the contents, similar to opening a CSV file. If you just double-click it, it will probably open your spreadsheet application, such as Microsoft Excel. But if you select Open with Notepad, the CSV file will open as a text file, because that's what it is really in its raw form. Now, to actually make use of the log file mechanism, we have to call it from our regular code. It's as easy as falling off a log, as adding this wherever you want to add something to your log file. And it shows the line of code for that. Pretty simple. It's the same every place except for what you put between the parens. Naturally, you will want to replace what's between the parens with whatever it is you want to record in your log file at that point. What I have there in the sample is real-world programming. Of course, that won't tell you a whole lot if you had that in a log file, so you will want to change it to something else, something that has to do with whatever's going on in your app. As an example, here's how it might be used in an exception block or a try-catch block, and it shows the code for that. So we would replace an existing try-catch block that might look like this, and it shows that old code, not that old, we just added it, but it's being replaced with this, and it shows the new version of it with the logging implemented. I replaced all of the try-catch block code in the app by following the example above. Note, if you make all these changes too, there is one method which is a special case, namely the answer is correct method. Because it returns a bool, you must add a return false to the new catch code shown above so that in that case it is. And it shows basically the same code. It's just telling you that it's from being called from a different place. The answer is correct method like they all do. And then the real difference is it adds another line, return false. You may be wondering just what these entries in the log file look like. Here's one I actually got some years back. And then that, of course, is shown an error message from a log file from 2009, early 2009, in fact. So we had just added try-catch blocks all over our code, and now we turn around and update them all? Yes, that happens quite a bit when programming. One round of refactoring can be quickly followed by another round of refactoring. Just because something is new or recent doesn't mean it shouldn't be changed if you find a better way to code it. If you want bonus tips on how to make sure that all exceptions use the logging service, and or how to add the computer name of the user of the app, and or how to automatically delete the log file if it gets too large, see my December 2014 article about this and it gives the URL or the web address for that article. In the next step, we will take advantage of a tool that Visual Studio provides to help us check the quality of our code and give us suggestions as to how we might want to change it to improve its performance and or its reliability. Until then.